My name is Brooke Morrison. I'm 33 years old, and I thought sharing my deepest grief with family meant receiving compassion and support, until my sister-in-law looked around a crowded party and said, "I lost my baby last month." What happened next proved that, while I was privately mourning the most devastating loss of my life, my husband's sister was stealing my tragedy to gain sympathy and attention from strangers who had no idea she was lying. Before I tell you how one moment of courage from my husband shattered every lie my sister-in-law had told about her fake pregnancy loss, and how medical records exposed the truth about who had actually suffered this heartbreak, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Please hit that like button and subscribe if you want to hear how 4 words, "That's Brooke's tragedy," silenced an entire party and made everyone realize they had been manipulated by someone who stole another woman's grief for social media sympathy. Let me take you back to where this story really begins. My husband Ryan and I have been trying to conceive for 3 years. We've been through multiple rounds of fertility treatments, countless doctor appointments, and the emotional roller coaster that comes with struggling to have the family we've always dreamed of. 6 months ago, after our 4th IVF cycle, we finally received the news we had been praying for. I was pregnant. The joy and relief were overwhelming after years of disappointment and medical intervention. Ryan and I were cautious in our excitement, knowing that early pregnancy after fertility treatments carries additional risks, but we couldn't help but feel hopeful that our dream of becoming parents was finally becoming reality. At 8 weeks, we had our first ultrasound appointment. Everything looked perfect. We saw our baby's heartbeat, strong and steady at 165 beats per minute. The doctor was optimistic, and we left the appointment feeling more confident about sharing our news with close family members. That evening, we decided to tell our parents and siblings about the pregnancy. We wanted to share our joy with the people closest to us, and we felt that 8 weeks with a strong heartbeat was a good milestone for making the announcement. Ryan's sister Sarah, who is 29 and married to her husband Jake, was one of the first people we called. Sarah and Jake had been married for 2 years and had been casually trying to get pregnant themselves, though without the fertility challenges Ryan and I had faced. "Brooke, that's amazing news," Sarah said when we told her about the pregnancy. "I'm so happy for you both. After everything you've been through, you deserve this miracle." Sarah seemed genuinely excited and supportive. She asked thoughtful questions about how I was feeling, whether we had picked out names yet, and when the baby was due. Her response felt warm and authentic, and I was grateful for her enthusiasm. Over the next few weeks, Sarah checked in regularly to see how I was feeling and how the pregnancy was progressing. She would text me articles about pregnancy nutrition, send me photos of cute baby clothes she had seen while shopping, and generally act like the supportive sister-in-law I had always hoped she would be. At 10 weeks, Ryan and I went in for our regular prenatal appointment, feeling confident and excited about our growing baby. But during the ultrasound, our doctor's expression changed from routine professionalism to serious concern. "I'm not seeing the heartbeat I would expect at this stage," Dr. Martinez said gently. "Let me try a different angle." After several minutes of searching, the devastating truth became clear. Our baby no longer had a heartbeat. We had lost our pregnancy. The medical term is missed miscarriage, when the baby stops developing but your body doesn't immediately recognize the loss. I had been carrying our deceased baby for nearly 2 weeks without knowing it. The news was devastating. After years of trying to conceive and the joy of finally seeing that strong heartbeat at 8 weeks, losing our baby felt like having my heart ripped out of my chest. Dr. Martinez explained our options for managing the miscarriage and scheduled a follow-up procedure for the next week. Ryan and I left the appointment in a state of shock and grief that was impossible to put into words. The drive home was silent except for our tears. When we got to our house, we held each other and cried for the baby we had lost and the dreams that had been shattered. Over the next few days, I took time off work to physically and emotionally process the miscarriage. The procedure to complete the miscarriage was scheduled for the following Tuesday, and I needed time to grieve and prepare for what would be one of the most difficult experiences of my life. Ryan was incredibly supportive, taking care of all the practical details while I focused on healing. He called our families to let them know what had happened, because I wasn't emotionally ready to have those conversations myself. When Ryan called Sarah to share the news, Her response seemed appropriately compassionate and supportive. "I'm so sorry," Sarah told Ryan. "Please tell Brooke that Jake and I are thinking of her and sending all our love. If there's anything we can do to help, please don't hesitate to ask." Sarah also texted me directly. "Brooke, I can't imagine what you're going through right now. I'm here if you need anything at all. Someone to talk to, help with errands, or just to sit with you. You and Ryan are in my thoughts and prayers." I appreciated her support and told her I would probably take her up on the offer to talk once I was ready to process everything that had happened. For the next month, I focused on grieving and healing. The physical recovery from the miscarriage procedure was relatively straightforward, but the emotional recovery was much more complex and ongoing. Some days were better than others. I had good moments where I felt hopeful about trying again in the future, and difficult moments where the loss felt overwhelming and all-consuming. Ryan and I started seeing a counselor who specialized in pregnancy loss, and we found comfort in connecting with other couples who had experienced similar losses. The counseling helped us understand that our grief was normal and that healing would take time. During this period, Sarah continued to check in occasionally with supportive texts, but she generally gave me the space I needed to process the loss without feeling pressured to talk before I was ready. About 6 weeks after the miscarriage, I was starting to feel emotionally ready to re-engage with family and social activities. Ryan and I had been invited to a birthday party for one of his coworkers, and we decided it would be good for us to get out of the house and try to return to some semblance of normalcy. The party was at a nice restaurant with about 30 people, mostly Ryan's coworkers and their spouses, plus a few family members and close friends. It was the kind of casual but festive gathering that usually would have been fun and relaxing. Sarah and Jake were also invited to the party, since Jake worked with Ryan and the birthday person. I was looking forward to seeing them in a social setting, now that I was feeling a bit more emotionally stable. The party was going well. I was enjoying conversations with people I hadn't seen in a while, and it felt good to focus on something other than our recent loss. Ryan and I were both in good moods and grateful for the social interaction. About an hour into the party, I was talking with a group of women near the bar when I noticed that Sarah had gathered a different group of people around her at a nearby table. She seemed to be telling them something serious and emotional, and several people were reaching out to comfort her. I couldn't hear what she was saying, but her body language suggested she was sharing something personal and sad. People were hugging her, offering supportive words, and generally giving her the kind of attention you give someone who has experienced a significant loss or trauma. My first thought was that something had happened to someone in her family, or that she had received bad news about her job or health. I started walking over to see if there was anything I could do to support her. But as I got closer, I heard words that stopped me in my tracks. "I lost my baby last month," Sarah was saying, tears streaming down her face. Ryan and I were so excited, and then at 10 weeks, we found out there was no heartbeat anymore. I felt like I had been punched in the stomach. Sarah was telling my story, word for word, detail for detail, as if it had happened to her. She was describing the exact gestational age when we lost our baby, the exact way we discovered the loss, even some of the specific emotions I had shared with her during our private conversations about the miscarriage. "It was called a missed miscarriage," Sarah continued, using the exact medical terminology that had been explained to me. "The baby had stopped developing, but my body didn't realize it. I had been carrying our deceased baby for almost 2 weeks without knowing it." The group of people around Sarah were offering comfort and sympathy, telling her how sorry they were for her loss, and asking if there was anything they could do to support her during this difficult time. I stood frozen, unable to process what I was witnessing. My sister-in-law was stealing my tragedy, claiming my pregnancy loss as her own, and using my grief to gain sympathy and attention from people who had no idea she was lying. But what made it even worse was that she was telling the story as if it had happened to her and Ryan, my husband. She was claiming that Ryan was the father of the baby she had supposedly lost. I felt sick, confused, and angry, all at once. How could she do this? How could she steal something so personal and painful and use it for her own benefit? I looked around the party for Ryan, needing him to see what was happening and help me figure out how to handle this devastating betrayal. When I found Ryan near the other end of the restaurant, I grabbed his arm and pulled him aside. "Ryan, you need to come with me right now," I said urgently. Sarah is telling people that she lost a baby last month. She's telling my story as if it happened to her. Ryan looked confused. What are you talking about? She's over there telling a group of people about losing a baby at 10 weeks, about miscarriage, about everything that happened to us. But she's saying it happened to her. Ryan's face went from confusion to horror as he understood what I was telling him. She's claiming she lost our baby? He asked. She's claiming she lost a baby, and she's using all the details from our experience. The timing, the medical terms, everything. Ryan immediately walked over to where Sarah was still holding court with her sympathetic audience. I followed behind him, my heart racing with anxiety about what was going to happen next. As we approached the group, Sarah was in the middle of describing the emotional aftermath of her supposed pregnancy loss. The hardest part is that we had told our families about the pregnancy, she was saying. We were so excited to finally be having a baby, and then to have it taken away so suddenly. Ryan walked directly into the circle of people surrounding Sarah. Sarah, he said loudly enough for everyone to hear, what baby are you talking about? Sarah looked up at Ryan with surprise and panic in her eyes. She clearly hadn't expected to be confronted, especially not in front of the people she was lying to. The baby Jake and I lost last month, she said, trying to maintain her story. That's interesting, Ryan replied, his voice getting louder and attracting attention from other party guests. Because the only baby lost in our family last month was the one that Brooke and I lost. The circle of people around Sarah went quiet, sensing that something was very wrong with the conversation they were witnessing. Ryan continued, Sarah, you're describing Brooke's miscarriage, you're telling people about our baby that we lost, and you're claiming it happened to you. I don't know what you're talking about, Sarah said weakly, but her face was turning red and her voice was shaking. You're lying, Ryan said simply but firmly. That's Brooke's tragedy, not yours. You're stealing her story and using our loss to get attention. By this point, the entire party had gone quiet. Everyone was watching the confrontation, trying to understand what was happening. Sarah, I said, finding my voice, how could you do this? How could you take the worst experience of my life and pretend it happened to you? Sarah looked around at the faces staring at her, clearly realizing that her lie had been completely exposed. I didn't mean, she stammered. You didn't mean to get caught, Ryan said. Sarah, you just spent the last 20 minutes describing in perfect detail the miscarriage that my wife experienced last month. You used her medical terminology, her timeline, her emotions, everything. One of Sarah's co-workers, who had been offering comfort moments earlier, looked confused and disturbed. Sarah, are you saying you didn't actually lose a baby? She asked. Sarah couldn't answer the question because answering it honestly would require admitting that she had fabricated the entire story. Jake, who had been at the other end of the restaurant during Sarah's performance, came over to see what the commotion was about. What's going on? Jake asked. Your wife just told a room full of people that you two lost a baby last month, Ryan explained. She described Brooke's miscarriage as if it had happened to her, using you as the supposed father. Jake stared at Sarah in horror. Sarah, what is he talking about? We didn't lose a baby. We've never been pregnant. The revelation that Sarah had also lied about Jake being involved in her fake pregnancy loss made the situation even more disturbing. She hadn't just stolen my story, she had involved her innocent husband in her deception without his knowledge. Sarah, Jake said, his voice full of hurt and confusion, why would you tell people we lost a baby? Why would you lie about something like that? Sarah finally broke down completely, sobbing and trying to explain herself to a room full of people who now understood that she had fabricated a pregnancy loss for attention. I'm sorry, she cried. I didn't mean for it to go this far. I wanted people to understand what Brooke was going through, and then everyone was being so supportive, and I didn't know how to stop. But her explanation didn't make sense. She hadn't been trying to help people understand what I was going through. She had been claiming the experience as her own and accepting sympathy meant for a loss she had never experienced. Sarah, I said, trying to keep my voice steady despite my anger and hurt. This wasn't about helping people understand what I went through. You told them it happened to you. You let people comfort you for a loss you never experienced. The party, needless to say, was effectively over. Most guests began leaving, clearly uncomfortable with the family drama they had witnessed and disturbed by Sarah's deception. Several people approached me before leaving to offer genuine condolences for my actual loss and to express shock at what Sarah had done. "Brooke, I'm so sorry for what you went through," one woman said, "and I'm sorry Sarah put you in this position tonight. What she did was unforgivable." Sarah and Jake left the party immediately after the confrontation, with Jake looking humiliated and Sarah still crying and trying to offer apologies that felt hollow and self-serving. Ryan and I stayed for a few more minutes to thank the birthday person for including us and to apologize for the disruption Sarah's behavior had caused. "Don't you dare apologize," the birthday person said firmly. "What Sarah did was disgusting. Using someone's pregnancy loss for attention is beyond inappropriate." The drive home was quiet as Ryan and I both tried to process what had just happened. I felt violated, betrayed, and confused about how someone could steal such a personal and painful experience for their own benefit. "I can't believe she did that," Ryan said finally. "I can't believe my sister would steal your tragedy and use it to get sympathy from strangers." "The worst part is that she had all the details," I replied. "She knew exactly what we went through because I trusted her with my grief. I shared my experience with her because I thought she cared about supporting me." "She used your trust against you," Ryan said angrily. "She took the most painful experience of your life and turned it into a performance for attention." Over the next few days, we learned more about the extent of Sarah's deception. Several people who had been at the party reached out to let us know that Sarah had been posting about her supposed pregnancy loss on social media for weeks. She had created an entire narrative on Facebook and Instagram about losing a baby, complete with posts about grief, healing, and the challenges of pregnancy loss. She had been receiving hundreds of supportive comments and messages from friends and acquaintances who believed she had experienced this tragedy. "I can't believe how many people were supporting her for something that never happened to her," I told Ryan as we scrolled through her social media posts. "She's been getting sympathy and attention for weeks by stealing our story." Ryan was furious when he saw the social media posts. "This isn't just what happened at the party. She's been living a lie for weeks, using your pain to get attention online." The social media aspect made Sarah's betrayal even more disturbing. She hadn't just told a spontaneous lie at a party. She had created an ongoing deception that involved dozens of people and weeks of fabricated grief. When Ryan called Sarah to confront her about the social media posts, she initially tried to defend her actions by claiming she was raising awareness about pregnancy loss. "Sarah, you weren't raising awareness," Ryan said firmly. "You were pretending to be a grieving mother when you never lost a baby. You were stealing Brooke's experience and presenting it as your own." "I was trying to help people understand what pregnancy loss feels like," Sarah replied weakly. "By lying about experiencing it yourself?" Ryan asked. "By letting people comfort you for a loss you never had? By posting about fake grief for weeks to get attention?" Sarah couldn't provide a satisfactory answer because there wasn't one. Her actions were indefensible. The fallout from Sarah's deception was significant. Jake was humiliated and angry that his wife had involved him in a lie about losing a child. Several family members were disturbed by her behavior and questioned her mental health and judgment. But most importantly for me, Sarah's betrayal added another layer of pain to an already devastating experience. Not only had I lost my baby, but I had also lost my trust in someone I had considered a supportive family member. "The worst part isn't even that she stole my story," I told Ryan during one of our conversations about the situation. "The worst part is that she made my real grief feel less legitimate somehow. She turned my actual loss into a performance, and now I feel weird about sharing my own experience." Sarah's deception had contaminated my own process of grieving and healing. She had taken something sacred and personal and turned it into entertainment for social media attention. 3 months later, Sarah and Jake's marriage was in serious trouble due to the trust issues created by her deception. Several family members had distanced themselves from Sarah after learning about her behavior. Sarah eventually deleted all of her social media posts about the fake pregnancy loss and posted a vague apology about sharing misinformation during a difficult time. But she never directly acknowledged that she had stolen my story, never apologized to me personally for the betrayal, and never took full responsibility for the harm her actions had caused. Ryan and I have maintained minimal contact with Sarah since the incident. We see her at large family gatherings, but the close relationship we once had has been permanently damaged by her betrayal. The experience taught me that some people will exploit even your deepest pain for their own benefit, and that tragedy doesn't make you immune to betrayal by people you trust. But it also taught me the importance of having people in your life who will stand up for you when you're too hurt to defend yourself. Ryan's immediate and public defense of me at that party showed me that he truly understood the gravity of what Sarah had done and was willing to protect me from further harm. 6 months later, I'm still processing the grief of our pregnancy loss, but I'm doing so with the support of people who genuinely care about my well-being, rather than those who would exploit my pain for attention. The woman whose sister-in-law stole her miscarriage story learned that some people will weaponize your vulnerability for their own gain, but also that authentic support from people who truly love you can help you heal even from the deepest betrayals. And the family that witnessed Sarah's deception learned that stealing someone's tragedy for sympathy reveals a level of selfishness and manipulation that can permanently damage relationships and trust. My loss was real, my grief was genuine, and my healing belongs to me, not to someone who would steal my pain for social media likes and party attention. Have you ever had someone steal your personal story or tragedy for their own benefit? How do you handle people who exploit your vulnerability for attention? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life stories about family betrayal. Protecting your emotional boundaries and learning that your pain is not someone else's performance opportunity.